Hello, I'm Tracy from MeatRx, and I'm here with another success podcast with our friend Tom. Hi, Tom.
Hey Tracy, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing very well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on today.
Oh, we're excited to have you, and I would like to hear your story. If you could tell me what life was like before carnivore and what your diet was like and your health conditions.
Okay, absolutely. Starting way back as a child, I had chronic bronchitis, and that's, I guess, kind of my first memory of health issues, I guess. And my doctor used to always prescribe, like an antibiotic or something like that to help knock it out. My parents and family were always very allopathic. So just, whatever the doctor put in our hands is what we put in our face. So it used to kind of, knock the symptoms out, maybe within a couple days or a week or something like that. But there was this one time, and this kind of started my journey. That's why I'm going back so far. It was about 30 years ago. I'm going to say maybe 16, 17 years old, where I had the same symptoms, went into the doctor, and they prescribed two drugs that I found out a year later, if taken together, could be fatal. So that was one of those things where being sick for an extended period of time, having taken those drugs, of course I didn't die, but it made me start really thinking, wow, if I can't trust my doctor, I better start paying attention and, really kind of learning more about nutrition and things like that. So fast forwarding through my adult life, I've done every diet that's out there. Did the Atkins diet, and did all the other kinds of different diets. I was a vegan for 3 years. I started out vegetarian, then I just figured if you're going to be a vegetarian, you shouldn't eat any animal meat because it's not right and all that stuff. So I was actually a vegan for 3 years, and I believe that that's probably what started my stomach issues. And I'll get into more of how that was corrected via carnivore. But through the through the veganism and things like that, I did a lot. I always do a lot of research, not always just to lose weight regarding different diets, but just I get bored easy. So I always like to try different things and stuff like that. And that's one thing that's been interesting on the carnivore diet now for almost a year. I haven't felt like, major desires to I haven't felt boredom, which is surprising to me because I eat a lot of ribeye, I eat a lot of New York strip, things like that. So one of the things when I first started, I always loved those meats, but I was like, well, I don't want to get sick of them, so I got to change it up and try other things. But I'll tell you, I could eat a 2.5, 3 pound ribeye and be stuffed, and the thought of eating a ribeye is just kind of like, oh my God, I can't do that. And then the next day I'm like, I could sure use a ribeye. You know what I mean? So it's very
Okay.
interesting. But anyways, to get back to my, you know, all kinds of different diets. I've tried everything. I would say probably about 20, 22 years ago or something was when I was a vegan. And ever since then, I just kind of always had stomach bloating. I had some cramping. I was diagnosed with colitis at one point. I'd be very surprised if leaky gut wasn't in there. I just never was formally diagnosed with it. And I was eating all the fiber they tell you to eat, keeping meat out because meat and fat is bad. I was never a big salt person or sodium person. I never really, salt, I didn't really crave it, so I never really added it. But, I understood that you're supposed to keep your sodium down and this and that. And I did that for 20 plus years, and almost on a daily basis, I would say I had something: bloating, gas, cramping, acid reflux was very high on the list of rewards for my diet and things like that. And I just couldn't figure out. It was just a way of life. It just became where I was eating a lot of Beano, because that helped, but that's obviously not healthy. And my girlfriend at the beginning of last year came to me with this new idea, keto. So, she kind of explained it to me. I was like, yeah, Atkins diet. I've done the Atkins diet, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't work. What you have to do is eat 6 times a day. So your metabolism's always working. That's the only way you can lose weight and stuff like that. And I had done a quick weight loss diet. That was one of those where you eat, 4 to 6 times a day, eat 3 or 4 servings of fruit, vegetables, and all that. You have some protein, but you kind of keep the fats down and stuff. And I went from 304 pounds to 193 pounds in roughly a year. So I
Wow.
had success.
Mhm.
My stomach issues never went away. The entire time, even losing all that weight, still had stomach issues. So when we got into the keto, I started doing research, of course, because no matter what I'm doing, I have to be sold to it, you know. And once I started looking into keto, it made sense. And the idea of eating fat to lose fat made sense as I looked more into the science and things like that. So I just kind of dove into it. So we did that for about 4 months, and I lost a good bit of weight. I was 287 January 2019, and by May 1st was when I started Carnivore. I was probably down to about 250, 260 in there. So I lost, probably a good 30 pounds in those couple of months. So there was results, but the stomach issues were still there. They had gotten a little better, but they were still there. So I started, doing research. Dr. Baker, of course, was one of the main proponents of, or main supporters for me to get in, because I loved what he was saying, and I wanted to challenge it. And who doesn't love a ribeye? You know what I mean? So
Right.
I figured, let's give it a shot. And literally within the first week or the first month of being carnivore, just eating meat, and I've never been a super, super strict, just meat, salt, water. But I did cut out all vegetables, cut out all sugar, which I had already pretty much done with the keto anyways. I was down to less than 20 grams of carbs a day. Um, my stomach, like zero stomach issues. The bloating went away, the gas went away, the cramping, the colitis. I had zero stomach issues, which was remarkable because nothing else I had done had ever worked. Um,
So had
so I was,
the ketogenic diet, did that not get rid of it either?
no, it didn't get rid of it. It helped, but I was still eating, I was still eating 3 or 4 servings of vegetables a day, so I still had those anti-nutrients in there, bloating me, and all the fermentation and all the gassing and all that stuff was still in there because I was still eating those foods.
Mhm.
So removing those had such an impact. I was like, well, I'm sold. I have no reason to eat them. I love avocados. Asparagus is the best vegetable on the planet. I love asparagus. I was talking with a friend of mine at work the other day. Love potatoes. Haven't had a potato in probably 2 years, you
Mhm.
know? So I love all these foods, but if they make me feel like that, I have no interest in putting them in my body. So since then I've added in, I've been, May 1st will be a year on carnivore. And I've had avocado a couple of times. I've had like onion and mushroom, because a ribeye is even better with a little mushroom and onion sometimes. And I've had no adverse effects from those. And this is like, if I do that, I'll do it for like, one sitting in maybe a month or two. It's not something I string together, because I figured that will cause, some stomach issues.
All right.
Um, I want to say I've had asparagus maybe once in the last, a little over a year. And that's just like a couple of spears, and before I would eat like half a bushel because they're so good. That sort of thing. I've stayed away from, the high oxalate, vegetables like spinach and broccoli, and stayed away from almonds and nuts and things like that, which I love macadamia nuts. But since staying away from there, I just don't have any of those stomach issues anymore. And that's one of the biggest, selling points for me. That's why I just imagine, can't imagine putting those back in, knowing that removing them had such a huge impact on me.
Mhm. Wow, that sounds awesome. So did you have other health benefits, or was it mostly just in your stomach or gut or whatever?
Mental. I had a lot of mental improvements. The last, I lost my mother in 2015, and I was in okay shape. I was probably about 225 or so, and I was coming up from my last weight loss, so to speak. When she passed, I just kind of stopped caring. I'm going to eat pizza. I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to live life because I could be dead tomorrow. Um, and of course, a lot of it has to do with my mental stability at the time. You lose your parent, and obviously your mental, stability is going to take a little bit of a hit. And, so I justified it. Well, 4 years later, I'm still justifying it. And, I got the rewards of that by being 287 with gut issues and depression, anxiety, stress, like everything kind of stressed me out. At the time, I was doing a lot of work from home, sitting behind the desk for 8, 10 hours a day, doing some trading and, some real estate investing and things like that. and I didn't want to get out of the house. I didn't want to move around. I felt anxious to even go outside. And then we have, all the things that happen in the world, terrorism, and now this new virus and things like that. Obviously we didn't deal with that back then, but there was plenty of other reasons to stay at home because it was so scary out there, and that's never really been my mentality. I've always been kind of an outdoorsy person. I like to go out and have fun. I like to rock climb. I like to hike. I like to, mountain bike, things like that. But I was in this place where I didn't like, even the thought of doing that just made me very anxious. So within, I would say probably the first 2 to 3 months of being carnivore, even though the stomach was cleared, I was still having some stress, still having those, anxiety, never to like a panic attack where I was, losing control, but I didn't feel like I was in control because I still felt different than I feel I should have, looking back. So within that 2 or 3 months, things just started to clear, and I just had like more of a general joy for life. And I just didn't feel as nervous or scared. I felt more self-confident. And anybody who watches this that knows me knows I've never really had much of confidence issues. But I was, during that period, I just, I was very just unsure, but since then, I haven't had those kind of issues. I'm actually working a job now out from behind the desk that I had taken with a local grocery store, which is a funny story because when I first got hired there, I was working in the meat department, and people would be upset to hear, and I probably shouldn't even say it, but now I'm actually a manager in the produce department. So yeah, I know, right? So I steer people to the meat department after going through the produce department. But anyways, so I'm working a much more physical job now. I'm on my feet all day. I'm walking, miles a day. I help break down the trucks, which is a lot of heavy lifting and things like that. And I just eat meat. According to them, I'm supposed to have carbs and all that so I can do these things, and I don't have the stress and anxiety. I don't have the mental weakness that I had before, to where I don't have confidence that my body can handle it. I want to challenge myself, and I'm back to old Tom, which is nice.
So
and I
you
have
feel balanced out then? You feel like
absolutely, yeah. And I've had minimal supplementation. I know a lot of folks ask about supplementation on this way of eating. And I did some magnesium glycinate. I always tell people to be careful of citrate because it has, loosening qualities, if you will. But so I've done a little bit of magnesium glycinate. I'll do a krill pill every once in a while from like Antarctic krill oil for the omega-3s and things like that. And then I take supplements for organs because I don't like the organ meats. So I'll do some like brain and liver or, kidney, things like that. But I have an interesting story over Thanksgiving. I wanted to test the whole brain improvement, mental clarity, and things like that. So over Thanksgiving, I said, okay, I've been, this way of eating for, what is that, 6 months. So I've done really well. My brain is, feeling good. I'm going to eat what I want to eat on Thanksgiving. So I did. We had all the spread, mac and cheese and mashed potatoes and vegetables and all that stuff. So I made up a regular plate like I would, but with mini portions. So I had just, a little bit of mashed potatoes, just like a couple of bites of mac and cheese. And then I had a couple of bites of tiny little sliver of pie afterwards. Well, everybody was having a good time and fun and all that. And, football was still playing back then. There was a story about an ex-football player that was helping homeless folks with housing. He was giving them houses basically. And I was sitting there almost in tears, like I couldn't fight back my tears. And I'm like, it's a touching story, but I shouldn't be crying. I don't know anybody that's homeless, and I don't know any of these people, but I couldn't hold my emotions back. And this was maybe an hour after I had eaten that stuff.
Wow.
That kind of blew me away. And I was like, wait, I don't like this, because I didn't feel like I could control it. Again, sad story, but no reason to cry, while you're watching it.
Right.
So fast forward, I want to say it was about 2 months or so. My girlfriend and I were sitting at a restaurant having a nice dinner, steak, of course. And my mother came up. We were talking about, missing her, and we were excited that my girlfriend got to meet her. My family's from Arizona, so we got to go out to Arizona to see her before she passed. So she got a minute to meet my mom and everything. So that was kind of, and that's a touching story. That's a story that should bring some tears to your eyes. But I didn't have those overwhelming emotions. It's a sad story. And it could certainly pull up emotions, but like even right now talking about it, I don't feel like a loss of emotional control. So those were the two kind of scenarios that really kind of blew me away. Okay, so if I eat this junk, even though I'm rewarded because I've done such a good job on Thanksgiving, I'm going to cry about homeless person getting housing, and then a couple of months later, when I've cleaned it up and went back to eating properly, I'm talking about something that should make me cry, my mother passing, and I was able to emotionally control and have a conversation. So I just found that pretty profound. That's why I wanted to share that, because it was kind of a big deal for me. And that's, I think mental illness is a huge, huge issue overall in the world, let alone in our country. And I think nutrition plays an enormous part of it, but there's not a lot of folks talking about it. I think that's sad.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I know what you're saying about a lot of people being overwhelmed with so much, and
Mm-hmm.
how that carnivore just kind of balances out your emotions. And it's not like you don't feel things anymore, but it's just like you're balanced and you can handle things. And
Absolutely.
we're so excited about carnivore. We just love telling everybody about it. Yeah. So I appreciate you sharing your story today. And
Absolutely.
yeah. So some of the foods you ate were just steak mostly, or did you have any dairy, eggs, that kind of thing?
I do, mostly what I eat is, like ribeye, New York strip, some picanha or tri-tip, those types of meats. I'll do the organ supplementation, like I said. My cheats, if you will, are those, those days where I'll have eggs. I'll have 4 or 5 eggs, and some bacon. I keep bacon kind of to a minimum because I feel like it will bring up a little acid reflux from time to time, not all the time, but sometimes. But I try to get nice quality bacon that's, none of the sugars and processed as much. I'll have, like some sausage every once in a while, that sort of thing. I do have like chicken thighs, just fattier meats. So if I'm going to do pork, which will be maybe, once every couple of weeks at the max, or once, a month, something like that. Of course, the fattier cuts, the better. We just did a brisket up the other day, which I haven't been historically good at smoking meats, but the brisket we did up the other day, actually last weekend, actually turned out fantastic. So that's been a delight, a little bit different than
Yeah.
the regular meats, but just those kind of things. I know I probably need to eat more fish. I had some sockeye salmon yesterday with a New York strip. Um, but yeah, so I'll have sockeye salmon, or I'll have shrimp every once in a while, things like that. But my main staple are the the muscle meats, ribeye, New York strip, picanha, tri-tip, things like that. Ground beef every once in a while. I've noticed the last several times I've eaten it, I'll thaw it out and then give it to someone else because I want a ribeye or another piece of meat instead. So
It makes you strong. So
yeah,
good. Well,
absolutely.
thank you, Tom, for sharing your story. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it. I know it'll help a lot of people.
Awesome. I hope it does. By all means, that's the only goal that when I talk to anybody about, what I've learned, is just sharing what I've learned. And, of course, people do what they do. And if someone can get something from it, that's fantastic. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Take care.